Hey everyone. um, hey, how are you?
Good.
Good.
So welcome to our April virtual open mic. Great writers tonight that'll be reading for us, and our featured writer poet tonight is Elizabeth Robin, who will be reading for us at the end of open mic this evening. So I do have our first three readers ready to go. I don't see Jackie still. Nope. So we're going to move on to, well, I don't see Susan either. Huh. Okay. So we have Lisa. You were third and now you've been bumped up.
I am now first. All right. Excellent. Okay. Hi, everybody. It's so fun to read with everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. Brooke, actually, you're the one that inspired this piece that I wrote, this poem that I wrote a couple months ago. So you and your poetry inspired it.
Cool.
It's titled Walk With Me. Walk with me, not in my shoes, but by my side, through my eyes. Walk with me alongside childhood brimming with cattails, holding grandpa's big hand. Walk with me through darkness where distant light and happiness fall silent. Walk with me through dad's maze of summer sweet grass cut beneath our feet, wet with dew and damnation. Walk with me plundering purple ditches and twin pines harboring souls of battered cats. Walk with me through quiet nights upon terrazzo floors, trapped between hollow walls. Walk with me along his dirt road as crickets vibrate the path. We'll hide in Mr. McKinney's private shed lined with handmade seashell lamps. Float with me in silence through his thick cucumber garden, marveling tendrils grabbing hold to plump summer fruit on the vine. Lie with me. Let's believe those days never happened, that the darkness was not ours to own. Run with me in time back to the present, to the now, to breathe, to sigh, to light a blind night. Walk with me in search of wings to lift us up upon gentle winds toward the sun and stars propelled by the moon. Fly with me, lifted by hope in tomorrow's light, as wind bolsters brave beginnings beneath our calloused feet.
Oh,
Thank you.
Beautiful imagery in there, Lisa. Wow.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I love Dew and Damnation.
Yeah.
I want to say,
Juxtaposition.
I love that Brooke was your muse. I love your muse.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that was the favorite thing I've ever heard you read.
Oh, thank you, Jane. Thank you.
All these months that I've been listening to your poetry, that is exquisite. That's really
Thank
beautiful.
you. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to read. Thank you.
Do you know, it makes me want to write poetry again. Listening to this, it does. It does. Your memories brought back some of mine that I'd like to write about. So,
See,
nice.
it all started with Brooke then, from Brooke to me.
Oh, Brooke. Nice
It
job.
all started with Brooke.
Pass it on. I think every time I hear Lisa read, it makes me want to write.
Thank you.
Glad you got to go first. That was a great opening for open mic. Oh, and happy Poetry Month. I forgot to say that in the beginning, but
yes.
Yeah, we get one whole month out of the year. Well, we know most of us, we get longer than that, but okay, well, I'm gonna move on to Katherine. Are you ready? And then I have Barry, and then Tara, are you reading?
Katherine Brown?
Tara?
Do we have two Katherines?
Yes. Yes, Katherine Brown, sorry.
Okay. I am ready. This is are we ready?
Yeah.
Yes. This is a short story that is a chapter from the memoir about my mom I'm writing called Anne, Queen of the Wing Chair. and this is called David on the Easter Cross. So it's good for the season. And I will be calling my mother Mom or Anne or Queen. She was Queen of the Wing Chair. Okay. A born flirt, Mom complained about my pickiness in men, but as I reminisce about the sorts and conditions of some of those I became involved with, fell in love with, and subsequently brought home to meet the Queen, I thank all the powers that be that none ever talked me into marriage. I believe that for a number of rebellious years, many of my selections were men I knew would never live up to royal muster, and they didn't, ever. But one in particular, Mom had absolutely refused to meet. She knew men, always had, despite the fact that the dominant male in her life had been a philandering alcoholic father who rarely darkened the door of the home he had built for his wife and only child. Line drop. I met David at a thoroughbred horse sale in Lexington, Kentucky. I was 40 and he 48, at a bar. Tall and dapper in a gentleman farmer's tweed jacket, a camel turtleneck, sturdy khakis with pearl snap pocket flaps, and brown front zip horseman's boots, he slid onto the stool next to mine and with a friendly smile asked if he could buy me a drink to toast the winner of the first ever Breeders' Cup race. Having just discovered rum and tonic on a Puerto Rican jaunt, I nodded yes, and over that icy concoction, got to know him as well as I needed to at the time. A 3-year affair began, an affair because although he left his wife and children on an East Coast horse farm to move into a swanky 10-room Manhattan apartment at a tweedy Upper East Side address, talk of divorce was as close as he ever got to terminating his marriage during our tryst. Though he'd go on endlessly about how he couldn't wait to walk me down the aisle, there was always a reason for, but not yet. A mutual male friend tried to warn me off this attractive unemployed zillionaire with a not so cryptic, "There's always another streetcar coming along." But I kept believing David's seductive words so hard that when he finally phoned long distance to issue a firm goodbye with little preamble, a mere week before we'd planned to spend a romantic Christmas in Vermont, I was devastated. The Queen, however, was not remotely surprised. She'd intuited his non-divorce and alcoholism long before I brought them up and had simply refused to invite him to her house or to meet him on common ground. He'd even tried to bribe her one Christmas with a holiday case of Estate Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon, straight from the vineyard his brother managed in California. Mom loved the wine and hoarded every bottle, only offering a glass to friends whom she knew would appreciate it. Brought up with impeccable manners, she wrote his brother a heartfelt thank you note, but David received no audience with the Queen. He may well be a multimillionaire because of family ties to Vanderbilts and Carnegies, she said, after the rascal broke her baby child's heart, but he's just common. On a positive note, the experience landed me in several years of much-needed psychotherapy, during which I learned about choosing men who actually respected me and with whom I had much more in common than those of my past. During that growth-filled time, Anne, my mother, confessed to a mismatch of her own, and I know now she timed her revelation to give my wounded ego a lift. Right after college, she'd fallen deeply in love with a Naval Academy midshipman from a wealthy New York City family. "What a time I had," she said, smiling at the memories. "I saw New York the way every girl should, like you've done with David. I spent time at his family's penthouse on Upper Fifth Avenue, ate at the best restaurants, danced to the best bands at the best nightclubs, and toasted the sunrise barefoot over the East River. I walked under those famous crossed swords with him at Annapolis before he left to serve as a pilot in World War II. When his plane disappeared over the Pacific, I was heartbroken. I grieved him for a long time. Everyone, especially his family, was so sympathetic. The thing is, Katherine, he never would have married me. I looked good on his arm and made him laugh a lot, and could chat up the hoity-toities at any cocktail party. But my blood would never have been blue enough for his wedding ring. Never. So do your grieving for your lost love for as long as you need to, and whenever you need to talk about it, I'll be right here. But don't think you did anything wrong, sweetie. All you did was fall in love. He's the chump." Anne wrapped and held me in a hug as my tears soaked the shoulder of her sun-yellow sweatshirt, and my heart began to lift just a little. By April, my sense of humor had returned when Mom gave David a final royal write-off, just as the Easter lilies began to bloom. For years, all of her closest chums could look forward to a Hallmark Easter card in their mailboxes, always a simple cross surrounded by pretty flowers. And in the spring of 1988, Mom mailed one of those sweet Easter crosses to a Manhattan apartment building with an upper crust address. In her careful, distinct cursive, she penned a message on the back. Dear David, am still enjoying the wine. Please do yourself a favor and grow up. You have such possibilities. Anne K. Albritton. In checkers, a player who gets one-upped is kinged. David, I believe, was queened. Thank you.
Beautiful allegory through that whole story of the royalness and the royal treatment. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Catherine.
You are welcome, Brooke.
I feel like we haven't heard you read in a while, so that was nice. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Good to have everybody back. I have a question, Catherine. Your mother and the crossed swords, that would have been engagement, marriage?
No, it's none of the above. It's sweetheart. It was back then. It was sweetheart under the crossed swords at Annapolis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Barry, you're up next.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Barry.
Hi, Barry.
So it's National Poetry Month, and being the sharp guy that I am, I thought, gee, I'll read some poetry. I have 3 little poems about poetry, and I thought I would start off with the very first poem I ever wrote. I was sitting in my office one day in New York City on Madison Avenue, and somebody came and stuck their head in my office and said, hey, we're going to a poetry reading. Want to come? And I said, poetry reading? Yeah, I guess so. So I went to a poetry reading at the 92nd Street Y, which is a cultural center in New York. And it was Billy Collins and Garrison Keillor. And I was,
wow.
they had to peel me out of the chair by the end of the night. Just smitten. And I said, during that, I said, son of a gun, I can do this stuff. And I actually wrote a little poem in the cab on the way back from there, on the way back to the office. And it ended up in here 12 years later.
Wow.
My poetry book, maybe today. And here's that little poem. At the 92nd Street Y, the college kid approaches the mic and asks the poet laureate, sir, when you write humorous verse, don't you do so at the risk of sacrificing depth? But what could be deeper than humor? Does a belly laugh come from a shallower place than a tear? That's it.
That's it. Love it.
Yes.
Billy Collins' answer to that question, by the way, was, who cares about depth? This next poem, if you ever wonder where poets get their ideas from, you don't have to wonder anymore because this explains everything. This is called The Poet's Existence. There is stuff stuffed into the unconscious. Every now and then, for no apparent reason, without warning, completely on its own, a leak occurs. A poem spills out. We are the anti-plumber. We do not fix leaks, we pray for them. This is the life of the poet, just wandering around, trying to spring leaks.
That's so good.
Thank you.
It's true. It's true. It's all true.
And finally, after this little poem, I will keep quiet and the poem will tell you why. This is called Tonkanic Meadow, my favorite spot from childhood. I feel the sun, not just on my face, but in my marrow. The nosegay live up to their name. I count 22 colors, 4 more than yesterday. It is so beautiful out here. There is no need for a poet.
Oh,
Nice.
Happy Poetry Month, everyone.
Your poetry reminds me a lot of Ogden Nash.
Ogden Nash.
Yeah.
Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker.
The law is so in love with the law, it's forgotten common sense. That's a good one.
mm,
Yet another Ogden Nash.
yeah.
Boy, that's a long time ago.
Yep.
Love your mind, Barry.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Barry.
You're welcome. Thank you, Brooke.
I think we have Tara reading next. If
Hey,
that's
Brooke,
okay
sorry.
with her. Yeah, okay.
I'm a middle school teacher and I'm still like in shock and awe from our last day before spring break.
Oh,
But I
Oh,
love
this
your
is-
work. I love hearing your voices. And I grew up reading Pat Conroy. So this is really special to me to read with you guys. Thank you so much for having me. The first poem I want to read is called The Birth. It's from my mom. 4 o'clock in the morning and the floor of the bathroom where my mother led me. Our black lab on her side, tongue lolling out of her mouth, 2 small pups already tugging at puffed up teats, a pale squirming sack beside her. Watch, my mother mouthed, and the dog nudged until the fluid-filled blister burst to reveal a wet black mass of quaking life. I stared as she licked all of the newborn dry with her tongue, even its hind, and the chewing of the cord until mother freed pup from self. The eating of afterbirth, the tossing of her head backward to get all into the far recess of her throat, and on she went again to the panting, her breath heavy with labor until the next sack appeared, clear and glistening in the dim light. I think every child should see this at least once, my mother whispered, her finger to her lips, pale blue of her bathrobe, ribboned with blood. She took my small hand into her own, and placing it on the new mother's head, together we soothed her through 3 more births. The last one, the final pup not moving, not breathing, not coming into life, even with its sack broken, and the mother so tired of prodding. Was it dead? My mother scooped that runt into her palm, swept the inside of its toothless mouth with the tip of her smallest finger. A tiny sputter of liquid, a rasp of oxygen into minuscule lungs. And I, not knowing in the stillness of that moment that I was holding my own breath, could once more breathe.
Oh,
Mm.
oh,
Wow.
wow.
Thanks.
Ah,
And second piece is called Mary at the Tomb. I walk carefully among these bits of broken rock, this narrow path, the weight of loss slowing my step. You who already resurrected my spirit, you who drew from me 7 demons, I come to smooth your nail-driven flesh with myrrh, aloe, nard. Oh, whitewashed stone rolled back from the mouth. Oh, darkness of early morning, my own breath echoing in hollowness. Oh, Lord, you are gone as I knew you would be. But here, my hands can't help but search for what I cannot see as these oils drop to the ground, drain into Jerusalem dirt.
ooh, beautiful.
Wow.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. I love listening to your voices tonight.
Tara, are your poems published anywhere and available?
No, I'm working on my first book, so I'm
Oh.
really excited. I went to AWP and I had 2 book offers, so I'm hoping.
wow. That's
Excellent.
wonderful.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Exciting.
Wow.
Those
that's
are great,
Thanks.
great poems, Tara. Thanks for sharing.
Tara, where are you from?
I love that you read about Annapolis because I live on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. So
Oh, I know
I'm
that
across
area.
the bay from Annapolis. Yep.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
Thanks.
And you had Brooke at the word dog. That poem got to all of us. I think
Indeed.
especially.
The birthing poem was just
Oh
amazing.
God, that was fabulous.
I never
Thank
would have
you.
imagined all that took place because we were kept away from all that business, you know, the cat having kittens and all of that when I was a kid.
Yeah, I was
Can't say
too,
I'd ever
but my
seen it.
mom surprised me, and I think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and my dad was asleep in the bed, and she woke me up, and she made me come to. It's one really special memory. I lost my mom in 2019, and I keep writing about her. I can't stop. She had
Oh.
dementia, so it was really a long letting go.
You have many memories to commit, memories to relive for her. That's
Very, very much. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. Okay, I have Denise, are you reading?
Yes.
Okay, well, I have you going next, and then I have Estelle, and then I have Jane.
Okay, I also, in honor of Poetry Month, have one of my pieces being about poetry. It's a little different from Barry's. It's called Method. Standing outside with notebook may inspire crisp expression or not. Whiskey neat at the elbow may whisper deep thoughts or not. Yellow pads at the ready may receive best-selling work or not. Words find their own path to the right spirit at the perfect time, into a mind, through a heart, over a tongue, onto a page. Words themselves choose how to be born and to whom, and that is their genuine delight.
Oh,
Really
excellent.
nice.
Love that. Very interesting.
Thank you. My second, I have three. My second one is sort of about my mother too. Mother has dementia, though she's still cogent to a degree, and she's in a nursing home, but she feels her life is very small at this point compared to what it was. And so part of my job is to help her not feel like her life is small. The poem is called Understand the Assignment. Be ejected from the soft place. Absorb love and grow confidence. Gather values, skills, friends, and lovers. Play hard, work hard, love hard, fall hard, become hard, but then discard hard, remembering the soft place. Teach the young ones, reach the young ones, be there as long as they need. Play by the rules, use all the tools, fish where the fish are, plan for your memoir. Connect the dots and be grateful, doing all the good you can for as long as you can. Refuse to wear out. But when you do, pass the baton.
Oh,
Ooh,
Refuse to wear out. I love that.
did you read that to your mom, Denise?
I haven't yet, but I will. I'll share it with you.
You need to. What a great last line.
If she's having a good day, that would be spectacular.
Yeah, she needs to know how important her life has been, I think. And the third one is a set of 4 little haiku. I'm starting to learn. I'm hoping they're reasonable. So this is called As Winter Passes. Number 1, vegetative state. Restraints contained my spirit until the spring thaw. Number 2, sunning on the bank, 5 turtles and a gator, quiet pond for now. Number 3, the old nesting box, rot is taking it over, yet bluebirds return. And number 4, beating the carpets, stale thoughts fleeting with the dust, annual refresh.
Love that.
ooh, yeah.
I'm trying.
Yes,
Love
they
the
are.
alligator.
Nice.
Think about how much power and meaning there is in two little words, for now.
Or now.
Yes, yes.
Tells me so much about what's going to happen, you know,
Mhm.
just for now.
Yeah.
Very haiku.
Good. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Yay.
Estelle, you're next.
All right.
Here.
Most of you are
Good.
familiar with my novel Rising Fawn. We just set in Lookout Mountain. And it's about an Atlanta life coach who loses her life as she knows it and has to flee from Atlanta for mysterious reasons up to the most remote section of Lookout Mountain overlooking Alabama. There she gets in touch with her ancestors who were Irish and Italian immigrants. In a sequel to the book, I've tried to imagine how those Italians got there in this section. I call it a prologue, and we fuss in my writing group about whether you have a prologue or not, but I call it a prologue. Sal felt the warm sun steam his face, toasting it around the edges, turning the tip of his nose into a small furnace. The sand supported him as in a marvelous, buoyant bed of straw. The Mediterranean breeze cupped itself around his cheeks and stole across his jaws. He melted into sand, pulverized from countless shells, the color of sunset and just ripening grapes. He could stay here forever and never move. The sound of water lapping around him soothed him to the point of sleep, like the ones he enjoyed after a lunch of wine and good gossip and food on the patio, enjoying the shore breezes. He sensed he was lying prone in a vat of wine. No, water like the sun-rich Mediterranean he knew as a boy, deliciously filling his days with idle play before he was put to the boat to earn his way at sea. Water spilled over his hands, soaked his culotte, meaning his hips or his butt. No, wait! Sal lifted his head, squinted into the sun, and felt his chest fall inward. The water was brown, not blue, and there were no seashells, only soggy, soft sand. And what was the green blur above the brown on either bank of the river? Then he knew. He wasn't back home. He was in America, South in America. This was the tide coming in, soaking his corpo, molo, magro, his skinny body. Mi barco, where was his boat? Madridio, brown water, the color of old roads, rose toward his single-sized worn leather shoes, teasing him, forcing him to pull his body awkwardly to a crouch. He backed away from the advancing water, lifting his feet gingerly in the soft, sodden sand. Niente, green rushes as far as he could see. The brown expanse carrying small bits of dead reeds and puffs of tan foam moved past him in the strong current, bending around the corner to the left and disappearing. There was no way to chase his boat where it was going. It would be stuck finally in some mass of rushes back on some Bianco's land he could never set foot on. His barca, he would have no fish for trade. What would he do for food? Would he starve to death or be eaten by a monster waiting for him in that brown water? Nothing. Georgia. Maledire questo, Georgia. Fatigue punctured his body and he fell to the sandy mass. He knelt on one knee, then two, and stretched his arms forward, sobbing like the young child he was now, bent by the weight of weeks traveling, by leaky boat on high seas, by rickety coach on sorry roads, and by boat again to this country. Strangled tears rippled his back and chest, and pulled him closer to the ground until his face lay in the mud. The spring tide, higher and faster than the usual 8 feet, had swept away his barca. It was nowhere in the river, as far as he could see. The desolation of the strange land folded in on him like the heavy winter rains of endless coast. Sal began his search for another boat late Saturday afternoon. He moved his cart down long, lonely sand roads that radiated like spokes from a wheel from Darien. The spokes of the wheel were broken off at odd points as the trail stopped for creeks and rivers that surrounded the busy port. Some spokes were missing, especially those to the north of town, because the flat woods in that direction were impenetrable and the creeks plentiful, lacing through hostile marsh. He'd heard a man down one of the roads had a dinghy he would let go of, as the natives called parting with a piece of property, whether it was a farm or a mall. Sal ran through his mind the words and phrases his friend John had repeated to him, coaching him on how to find an old boat to replace his swamped one. A man's wife was his woman. The prison that held those unfortunates caught by the Scarifo was the pokey. A man who'd fallen out of a tavern onto his own knife hadn't just died, he'd busted his guts. Sal despaired of ever being able to speak such a strange language. Now he was practicing the local people's way of bargaining. When he found a skiff he thought he would work, he had to act like the man's boat was the most rotten craft he'd ever seen, even if it would suit his needs. What you got to have, he muttered. Piece of junk. He liked his old boat. It helped him pull in squirming wet bushels of fish, shrimp, and crab, enough for him to almost make a living. The old boat had been heavy as mortal sin, hard to turn, bulky, and so likely to sprout barnacles that he'd almost laughed at his misery as he watched the dark sienna brown waters carry off his dinghy. Thus he'd gotten his first lesson in how powerful the tides were here compared to Italy. At times he looked out and saw brown, slick mud the color of a sea cow and only a small rivulet of water slowly moving in the empty riverbed. Then he looked later and the water was over the banks and running toward him through the marsh grass. He wasn't thinking of what that water would do to his old boat when he laid out to nap on the sandbar in the river that Friday morning. After the tide carried off his boat, he went back hours later, expecting to see it laying where he'd last seen it, but it was gone forever. So Sal ends, as you might gather, ends up in the United States from Italy in Darien, Georgia. That's where he comes ashore. That's where he comes into the United States.
I love your sensory details. They were absolutely fabulous.
Thank you, Tara.
You're welcome.
You certainly know the marsh inside out.
Yeah.
I think I do. But sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Estelle,
Always lots of surprises.
is that in Rising Fawn?
This is a sequel to Rising Fawn, in which I'll go back to, I'll have Claire go back to even further back in history a little bit as to how those ancestors got where they are.
I was going to say, 'cause I've read that book cover to cover and I don't remember that scene.
There's some references to the Italians and the Irish immigrants
Yes,
and the troubles they had with people there, but not how they got there. That's another story. So that's what I'm trying to bring in. And in fact, but Italy was not a country until 1870. It was a feudal land. And that 1870 is when you have most of the immigration. And the people who come over, many of them are farmers, many of them are fishermen. And I'm intrigued with how did the people get here who were Italian? What were the circumstances that brought them? And often they were in records in Darien, they were ship's captains. They had some abilities, but they, way back, they would have been ship captains hired by people around the world. Darien itself was actually quite a center in the 1800s for bringing tall pines out of Georgia to form the mast for the navies of many countries. So I have them come in at Darien because there's business there.
Do you have a title for the book yet, for the sequel?
Not yet.
Okay, look forward to it.
Yeah. It'll be a while. You know me, it takes me a while. Got to experience a lot of things before it comes out. Thank you.
Thank you, Estelle. So on Brooke's behalf, I'm going to share that our next readers will be Jane and then Jackie. Barb, are you reading tonight?
I'm just listening. Thank you.
Okay, great. So it looks like we will be doing Jane, then Jackie, and then it will be time for our featured writer, Elizabeth Robin. So Jane, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. I'm going to read tonight from, I'm not as smart a boy as Barry, and I forgot that it was Poetry Month, so I didn't bring poetry. I'm going to throw myself in Katherine and Estelle's boat, and this is from my novel that I'm writing in the progress of, And it's also an historical novel. It's set in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in Boston. And last time I read, 2 months ago, I read the story of the Italian, there was an Italian and an Irish, talk about this, Estelle, where there was an Italian and Irish marriage. There's Jimmy, who's Irish from Charlestown, and Angela, who's Italian from the north end of Boston, which is the Italian section. And this is the chapter following the one that I read in February. And it is called Late Inning Save, 1967. Jimmy brought Angela home to their small apartment to recover from the miscarriage. Calling in a week's worth of sick days, he watched over her as she grieved for the baby he had never known existed. He was confused by the depth of her sadness and wondered if something was wrong with him because he felt nothing of the sort. He busied himself making simple meals for her, and the days passed in quiet. Angela sat and stared out the window, unwilling to speak, causing him to wonder if the wife he knew would ever return. Some evenings he'd slip out once she'd finally fallen asleep and catch the end of a Sox game at the corner tavern, trying to cheer her the following morning with an animated recap of the plays or a good winning score. He avoided any talk of Tony Conigliaro's condition or career prospects since the devastating head blow from an Angels pitcher's fastball. Every fan in Boston had seen and heard the sickening crack of that ball as it smashed into their idol's left temple, broke his eye socket, and dropped him to the ground at home plate. They watched the replays and talked of nothing else. Only good news, Jimmy repeated again and again to himself until he was exhausted and exasperated. All of his efforts resulted in flat-eyed, indifferent stares from Angela. Finally, Jimmy accepted the fact that there was nothing he could do, nothing he could say, nothing he could be that would make up for the loss of her child or the loss of her hometown hero. They'd had their shares of ups and downs, but the fall of '67 had dealt them, mostly Angela, a double header of heartache, and he wondered if there was any recovery from this. Line drop. I'm just going over the Warren for a bit, get a beer, wanna come? He hollered into the bedroom one night toward the end of the week. Angela shrugged and turned away, shuffling to the bathroom and closing the door without a word. Jimmy took that as tacit permission to leave and headed downstairs to the front door, relieved to feel the fresh, crisp fall air once he hit the street. A salty breeze struck him as he turned the corner and strode the few blocks to the Warren Tavern. But instead of being buoyed by the sensation, he felt an old resentment rise in his chest. At the Warren, he looked around and spied his Da alone at the bar. He approached him and clapped his back. Hey, I need a beer, buy me one? Dennis Rourke regarded his son and turned back to his own drink, saying, sure, from one father to an almost one. He raised a finger to the bartender. Kevin, bring my son a Pabst. They tipped glasses at one another when the second one arrived. His father grunted, cheers, so how's it going? Jimmy drained his Pilsner and blurted, I'm so damn tired of her moods. What does she want me to do? It wasn't my fault. If she doesn't snap out of this soon, I'll go crazy. It was just a baby. We can always get another one. Dennis raised an eyebrow. Then I won't be bothering to remind you again how I told you not to marry her. So go get yourself another one. That's what you got to say to me? Leave Angela at a time like this? Geez, kid, how many times did you get hit in that head playing ball anyway? No, go get yourself another baby. That ought to do it. End of problem. He leaned over the polished wood bar. Kevin, bring us 2 more, would you? Da turned back to him. Look, son, This ain't rocket science. She wants a baby, give her a baby. What's it to you? Happy wife, happy life. Gives them something to think about. Line drop. Jimmy wove home to Slowly Street later, far too drunk to put the proposed solution in play. He nursed a hangover the next day and mulled his father's advice while he continued his watch over Angela. 2 mornings later, he turned to his wife in their bed, pulled her to him and said simply, I want to give you what'll make you happy. She rewarded him with a smile for the first time in many days and returned his hug. They made love like teenagers, fierce and hard, full of passion and wanting more. When they finished, they laughed together and rolled apart. She drew the sheets over herself and sat up. Her hair was filthy and matted, and she hadn't worn makeup in a week. But Jimmy gazed up at her and thought how beautiful she looked after sex. She traced a finger up the line of hair in the center of his stomach and said, hey, if we get pregnant this time and it's a boy, let's call him Tony. Not Jimmy Jr.? Nope, definitely Tony. It might be good luck. It could bring Tony's C back again. And our baby will have gorgeous brown eyes like him. And my side of the family, she teased. Not my blue ones, he mock whined. Nope, brown, Italian ones. She drew her fingers around her eyes and batted her lashes at Jimmy. And those big brown eyes will see every curveball and every fastball that'll come for him. He'll be unbeatable, our little slugger. Not a football player like me? Ange hit him in the ribs. Why would you wish that on our kid? So he can end up playing for the Patriots? You want that for Tony? They both giggled at the thought. The Boston Patriots have been stumbling around the game cellar since they were founded, only once even making it past the divisionals. All right, point taken. They say this season's gonna stink too. You win, baseball it is. Jimmy clasped his hands behind his head and settled back on the pillow, a smile spreading across his features. He thought about the picture Angela had just drawn for him, his imagination pushing even further into the boy's future. Little Tony, our very own kid, slugging away and running bases while crowds cheer him on. Damn, he thought, I think I might like this. I just might. That's it. Short chapter. Thank you.
Jane, I love to hear you read that because you know it inside out. I love your, all of the colloquialisms and you've just got it all. That's cool
Well,
stuff.
history, it's just a history. It's a history set. Takes it's a lot of research getting all the details, kind of making sure they're right. But and doing the time tracking.
I love the metaphorical details that you add in because they add so much to the story overall. It's fantastic.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun to write. Okay.
Only you would know that the Patriots were ever that bad. Only
Oh
you
my
would know the
God.
Patriots were in the basement.
Oh, they were
They were
embarrassed.
forever.
years and years. They were awful.
Cheers, Jane.
Cheers, dears.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, ready for me?
Jackie, you're reading, right?
Yeah. And
Did you cut your hair?
oh yeah, a couple months ago. Grown out. Trying to get it longer. These are all from a poem a day, and it's been an extra challenge. I love to do the poem a day challenge, and I try to do it every year. But this year I also launched a blog, and those of you who are on Facebook probably have seen some of that. So these are all new. I'm just writing them every day and then putting them out on the blog. And this one, I'm going to read it off my phone, which I don't usually do, but I have made some revisions. This one, the prompt was, as those of you who know about the Poem a Day, you know that we get a prompt every day. And there are a variety of different sites, different poets and writers who sponsor that. But this is the one, National Poetry Writing Month.net. And the blog was to write a love poem. And I thought, oh God, not another love poem. So it's titled Love is a Circus. And it has an epigraph. Something about the circus stirs their souls and they ache for it when it's absent. Aaron Morgenstern. Sometimes love is a three-ring circus. In one ring, a clown and his antics perform. Behind the painted clown face, colorful and cheerful, the clown scares us and doesn't make us laugh. In another ring, an animal trainer with a whip orders a tiger or an elephant to do tricks, cracking the whip in the air. In a third ring, maybe a magician who asks a beautiful woman to step into a box so he can saw her in half or make her disappear. Up above, a daring young man on a flying trapeze swings through the air, while a daring young woman on a platform leaps from her safe perch. She reaches for him, but they don't connect, and she falls from the air. Please, Cupid, say there is a safety net.
It's an interesting love poem.
I had to come up with some other angle.
I love your use of cliches in that. It works really well.
Oh, thanks. Is that a compliment?
It is. No, if you can use them and they work, it's golden. And yours is. Nice job.
I do want to reiterate that these are basically all first drafts. So there's no time with the Poem a Day to revise, except for sometimes when I'm tapping it in, I might be changing it a little bit like I did on that one. But okay, so this next one it's my first. I like to write in form sometime because it's fun, but this is my my first what they call just left me. What you do is you take a quatrain by some other poet, and it's a crosta. And you take a quatrain and you take those 4 lines, and each of those 4 lines becomes the last line of each stanza. And each stanza has 10 lines. Plus you've got some rhyme schemes in there too, but I'll spare you the other detail. It's a Spanish form. And also on my blog, it's just jacquelinemarkham.wordpress.com. And I give a little bit of information about the different forms and the kind of poetry that we're working on. This one has an epigraph by May Sarton, which is the quatrain. And the title of the poem is The Poet and the Unicorn. Prisoner at a desk? No. Universe of feeling, where everything is seen and nothing mine. As if at times I could put out a hand and touch the lion head, the unicorn, May Sarton. If I tap into that feeling bank that overflows with heart pierces, uncontrollable tears or hyena laughs, I meld with oaks and Spanish moss high in blue outside my window. My painting of an animated palm tree slaps the porch wall with each burst of wind, serenaded with chimes at a higher pitch. Inside may be a hollow place until it flips to fill my being. Prisoner at a desk? No, universe of feeling. Before my imagination parades a multicolored kaleidoscope of characters as if a Mardi Gras parade or a merry-go-round up, up, up and down, down, and again down. Before my mind's eye, but not mine. They are not mine, these many images and characters who parade to an unheard fife and drum. A scene where everything is seen and nothing mine. But does the knowledge that these things are not mine keep me from thinking, imagining, to put out my hand to the branches high up and swaying moss above my head, to wind that turns the ceiling fan, wind that moves sunlight on my hand, multi hues of green cherry leaves turn transparent, magical and moving on my page, like shifting sand, as if at times I could put out a hand. My left hand that does not write, my curious hand that reaches and reaches more, my wandering hand as if in dark searches something tangible, my planter's hand to drop a seed in cover with dark moist earth, my gentle hand that longs to touch the wild and the sensual with courage to brace against naysayers' scorn and touch the lion head, the unicorn.
Love.
Amazing.
When I first got that prompt, I was like, no, you don't want me to write 4 stanzas with 10 lines all in one day. No, please. But you know, once
fabulous.
I started, thank you. It was once I started it, you know, it flowed.
Send that to Stirring Magazine. I bet you they'd take it.
Which magazine?
Stirring.
Stirring. Okay, thanks. I'll shape it up just a little. Okay, this one was the first poem I wrote on day one, and the prompt was to write a prose poem about the body. And some of you know that I'm working on a series of poems. I know spirit writers know, on Suzanne Valadon, who was a French painter who supposedly we think is the first woman to actually paint a nude self-portrait. And she's just now getting some attention. Of course, she's long gone. So it's a prose poem. You're supposed to have a crisp visual image and an encounter between 2 characters and some exchange. It's short, and I will then leave the stage. It's called the Red Shawl. The red shawl, woven with an intricate paisley pattern that swirled around the curves of the woman's body and fell in folds of fringe. Silken black fringe in 5 strands hung like ice from the edges of the red shawl. The woman fidgeted, pulling the heavy red cloth around her, gazed absent-mindedly at her image in the mirror. From behind a screen near her easel, a tiny woman stepped out, her body nearly transparent. I know who you are, the woman in the red shawl said to the tiny woman with hair curled around her face like a cap on her head. You are Suzanne Valadon. It's only the first time that your own body startles you, the ghostly Valadon replied. Now pick up the brush and load it with color. I am here to guide you. The larger bodied woman loaded her brush with paint and the red shawl slipped from her shoulder. Her body, plump with her 60 years of living before her in the mirror, looked as appealing as a bowl of fruit in the sunlight, she thought. As she touched her brush to the canvas, her spirit revealed itself in her scars, her veins and capillaries. Its imperfection shone vivid against the red shawl. Thank you.
Oh, nice.
Marvelous, marvelous.
Love
Thank
that.
Thanks, everybody.
Beautiful images.
Very
Love
nice.
that shawl. I want it.
And if you go to my blog, you'll see one of those famous paintings of nude by Suzanne Valadon. It's not the self-portrait, but it was one I had on my desktop. It's one of her many.
Thank you, Jackie. Sounds like you're doing pretty good with the challenge this month.
Trying, giving it my best. It's very
You know,
tiring.
where do you get all these prompts from? Because I just kind of do it on just like a day-to-day, but like I'm not getting prompts from anywhere.
Oh, okay. It's that National Poetry Writing month added. I'll send you the link and or I can put it in right here.
Okay, thank you.
Do you send them in, share them at all with others, Jackie?
There are a variety of ways you can do that. You can put your participant site. They have the place for you to put your sites, and that's one reason I want to go ahead and do my blog. And then there are also there's like a place to comment. If you go into each prompt, a lot of the different poets will put their poem in, and then there'll be some comments. And then the moderator, Maureen Thorson, she picks out a couple and posts them. So there are a variety of ways that you can get involved at whatever level you want to.
Thank you.
And it gives you that impetus to stay with it. Because I mean, you know, it is a lot of creative energy. Sorry, Elizabeth. Trying to put this in.
Elizabeth, are you ready?
Wasn't sure whether it was my turn yet or not.
Well, I'm gonna introduce you first.
Oh, okay.
That's wait
fun.
Yeah. So I'm gonna introduce our featured writer and reader this evening, Elizabeth Robin, who is a retired high school teacher and has 2 collections of poetry through Finishing Line Press, Where Green Meets Blue, 2018, and Silk Purses and Lemonade, 2017. Her 3rd book, To My Dream Catcher, will be out June 2022. I still feel like I say 2022 too many times. Also, the 2021 winner of the South Carolina Writers Association Carrie McCrae Nickens Fellowship, Robin appears most recently or is forthcoming in Drunk Monkeys, The Broadkill Review, I Am Not a Silent Poet, Blue Mountain Review, Good Juju, The Fourth River, and Ripples. Robin MCs a monthly open mic and partners with arts groups to bring literary programs to Hilton Head Island. Please, everyone, help me welcome Elizabeth Robin. And congratulations on your new publication. Will you be reading from that tonight, or?
I am, actually. Okay. I was trying to think of a theme for tonight. Because, you know, people always ask you when you have a book, like, what is your book about? And to address that question when you're talking about a collection of poetry is a little different, because there are common threads through a collection of poetry, but it isn't like a novel where there's a plot line, right? Or characters, or, you know, some seminal moment that you can address. So To My Dream Catcher, the title comes from what the thread is through all the poems, that it was dealing with a lot of ghosts and haunting things in my life at one point. And I needed to find a way through those things. So a lot of the poems have to do with that, you know, working through those kinds of issues and that particular way of sorting out your life. But I don't usually talk about the setting where a lot of this happened. And so tonight I'm sharing 4 poems with you that have to do with the setting where I learn to work through these things. And that stems from a trip I decided to take in 2018, right after Where Green Meets Blue came out. And my friends thought I was crazy. I'll just say that up front. I bought a teardrop camper that my Ford Escape could pull, and I hitched it up and I threw my dog, he's been barking tonight a lot, so you might hear him, but I threw him in the back seat and started driving, and we ended up doing like 19,413 miles, and we saw a lot of national parks and national forests and a lot of states and cities that I had never been to in my entire life. And in that space, I got my act together. And national parks were a big part of that. So I wanted to kind of give you a kind of a trip tonight. So the first, these are in the order that I saw them. The first is, of course, at Conga National Park, our South Carolina National Park. And I happened to arrive there on a rather stormy day. And, my friends had been very concerned about me taking this trip and used to say things like, haven't you seen the movie Wild? Don't you know some of the stuff that can happen to you? And I'd be like, because I had no idea. So I arrive at Conga, and my dog is really upset with me because it's pouring down rain and I go out anyway, and of course take him with me. And this poem comes from that and why he was concerned about our safety. A Conga by the river. A shimmy down slick boardwalks, a shake and shucked rain slicker, to the loblolly pine standing on undersized tendrils holding this tower to earth. Lightning finds this monolith, scratching the sky, reaching. Its second century girth, flaking scales and veins, map a history etched in bark, where beetles and fungi feed. I can relate. Pine grenades drop, no time to move, hit or miss. On the dance floor, now soaked, primeval muck, speckled in fern green and cypress knees, lands the surprise entry, jig-a-jig. Thank you. We only stayed one day because the weather was miserable that day. I'm often asked from that trip, what was your favorite national park? And the first time I hadn't really thought about it, and I blurted out the answer, but it actually is my answer. And so I don't know if you've ever thought of South Dakota as an amazing and beautiful place, but it isn't what I thought. I wasn't what I was expecting. Let's just put it that way. And so this poem, I decided to construct a bunch of like little imagist poems in a series to give you a tour of the Badlands of South Dakota and the other places I drove while I was there. And I call this Bits of Dakota. Dawn breaks to the soft quilt of the meadowlark's song, and a moonscaped terrain budding from pastures dotted with black-eyed daisies and flitting magpies. Cottonwood snow drifts across the camp, dances along, or sticks. The air still, the fly bites vicious. Mud splashed along the Missouri River Trail, an early morning storm blows, lightning warns, thunder rolls, rain cools. Prairie dogs pop up, bark warnings, a bob and weave communal grace. As the breeze sweeps the grasslands, dodging coyotes and pinto colts, a constant call to do-si-do in the river woodlands wind. In Sturgis, without motorcycle or man, angry clouds threaten, hail pelts in golf balls. I noticed the bull in a grazing herd, standing apart, large and posturing. Notice his immense sex, bluster, snorting, head shaking about, a bravado meant to scare. The cows, a unit of minimal differences, color, size, demeanor, blend, huddled in a mass. There are so many cows. Skies, bold with pastels, pink, lavender, lemon, peach, sherbet, sunsets. Night brings drama, a stage lit with a round, bright moon, unfiltered stars, Venus and Jupiter, bloated lanterns. A wild wind whipping, lashing tree limbs, hair unfurled, I stop, feel its soft, brute force as I watch the Big Dipper inch across the sky.
Mm. Oh, beautiful. That sort of make you want to go there. Very nice.
I don't even know how many poems I wrote about it. I don't know that you can describe it. It's so open and the sky is so big and so much clearer than, there aren't trees obstructing the view. Like, I'm an East Coast girl. It's astounding. It really is well worth the trip. So as I went west, and by the time I got to California, I figured out that I wasn't going to these national parks for the same reason most people do. Yellowstone was a big eye opener, but I didn't bring my poem about Yellowstone tonight. But I was trying to find out how to be content in solitude. And so I was taking a very different trip, I think, than many people do. So by the time I got here, I had this to say. There are a lot of amazing parks in California with incredible trees, and I'm a tree hugger, so. Redwoods. I found a bench placed just for me among ancient giants on the Cow Barrel Road. I sat for hours undisturbed. Perhaps its presence, the immense girth, rough corrugated bark, red hue and height, explain my fascination. Absorbed by near immortality, stature draws an audience. Yet here, I sit alone in the heart of quiet. The herd pursues the arrow, marked the big tree, piles back in the car, pays a drive-through, nabs the keepsake pick. In this, as all games of life, they look for the next sign.
Wonderful.
So this last one, it isn't about the national parks I visited so much as the campsites I visited on the way down, because by this time, this is a stretch that I drove from Carson City, Nevada, and I ended up eventually in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I did flip over to California a couple of times to see, I went to obviously Death Valley National Park and Joshua Tree National Park, and had campsites there. But by then the average temperature was around 120 degrees. I chose an interesting path, yeah. So I needed to be able to plug in the air conditioner, if not for myself, definitely for my dog Byron, because he would have lost it. So we really appreciated having the air conditioning at that point. But I didn't find the grittiness I expected in this particular part of the trip. So it's interesting. So I call this one The Wild West. My spirit whirls like a dust devil, a mystery energy that soars, vanishes. The fear, what goes on, whispered in grocery lines, sketchy corner liquor marts, a local pharmacy queue. People live behind gates in trailer parks, new riders of the Purple Sage, filling an abandoned Hollywood set, the shell of a church meeting house, left like most films, a facade, empty inside. I read strip mall signs, check cashing, massage, tattoo, and question if I dare shop here. But we chat in line like old friends. What can survive here but rattlesnakes and reptiles? Home today, a hedge of honeysuckle under a cottonwood tree. In the morning quiet, voices waft across the camp. A motor starts. A poem spills onto the page. A calico cat slides by. Sunshine warms my face. Wind dries my hair. The breeze tickles. Flapping laundry, riffling tree leaves, twittering whens. Some days, this is enough.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an interesting trip. And obviously I have another, I don't know, 15 or so poems that are just on settings. So.
And now, Elizabeth, you really captured the contrast between the real grit and the beauty. The grit of the streets and the strip malls and the signs and the things that people do. And then even in a camping park with trailers, so beautiful. It's lovely.
It's amazing. And, you drive, I can't tell you how many times I was afraid I was going to run out of gas before I found a gas station. They're just so few and far between. And when you're pulling a trailer, your mileage is just ain't what it should be. And so you really are in the middle of this vast space with no people. And so when you do run into people, you expect them to be grittier and not have the same petty worries that you see sometimes. Yeah. People worry about things that don't really happen that often. And it's just kind of interesting contrast for me. But anyway, so that's just a piece of my new book, and I'm very excited to launch it. I haven't seen my galley proofs yet, but tomorrow ends my pre-order zone. And so, that piece will be done. And, there's just a series of things I have to do. And then somewhere in the middle of June, it will show up. And then I'll start hopping around. I'm thinking I'm going to hitch up. I have a new trailer now and a bigger car to pull it. And I think I'm going to do a book tour in my camper.
I love it. It's like your own personal writing retreat. It's fantastic.
It's
great.
Yeah, it's a story in itself.
Yeah. I can't tell you how much I wrote when I was out there. It really feeds the muse. It really does. Highly recommend. Whether you sit at one for a long period of time or you travel around.
Travel almost 20,000 miles. Huh?
Yeah. That car I traded in for the new one. It had a lot of miles on it by the time I was done.
How many national parks did you reach?
That trip, I was aiming for 34. I only made 28. I had to change some of my plans because of fires that summer, and also because of what my dog couldn't do. Like there were ferries to some of them, and the rules for him were dicey, and so I ended up making a lot of choices about what I did and didn't do based on where he was allowed to go. So the Cow Barrel Road in Redwoods, if you ever go there, especially you, Brooke, because I know you'd bring your dog along. The Cow Barrel Road is like miles and miles. It's completely isolated. It's an old dirt road, and dogs are allowed on every inch of it. And it's in the middle of the Redwoods. It's just an amazing place, and nobody goes there.
It's neat.
It was empty. I was like, where are all the people? This is beautiful.
Elizabeth, I know you are super at marketing, but this just came to me as you were talking about your book about your national park visits. I knew someone who was not really a writer, but she wrote a book about her journey on the Appalachian Trail. She and her husband walked the Appalachian Trail, and it was a healing thing because they'd lost a child to a drug deal gone wrong at the University of Tennessee dorms. He died. They were healing their marriage, and they wrote each other notes along the trail, and she's quoting for some of those. That book is still in publication, and it's been 14 years at least since it came out, because it's the Appalachian Trail. And I'm thinking of all the national park bookstores that are in these parks, or there used to be. Can't remember who used to handle them, but it's all done through one company. But that's the sort of book that might have appeal to the bookstores at the national parks. Just an idea.
Yes, this is something I've thought. Well, I've also written a nonfiction piece called Travels with Byron that is specifically about the trip.
Yeah.
I feel like there are writers in residence programs in national parks and different things, and there are a lot. I mean, I met a lot of interesting people who've cobbled together some fascinating ways of making a living while they spend their life camping. And couples that like each have a particular expertise, and they're docents in different places, and it's really amazing. I met a couple, I think she was 89 and he was 90, and they've been doing this for 20 years.
Wow.
And they've been like docents at the Smithsonian and all kinds of different types of national parks, the historical ones and the more rustic ones. It's pretty amazing.
It does sound like you've made some progress in finding peace in solitude.
Yes. It ended up being a very important trip for me that way.
What a stroke of luck that you did that in 2018.
Oh,
well, in 2020,
about that?
In 2020, what I ended up doing was exploring all of South Carolina's state parks. That's what I've been doing since, until my knee fell apart. Now I'm rehabbing that, and then I'll be able to get back out. But the state park system in South Carolina is something else. There's a little something for everyone. So that's been interesting as well. Once they opened up again. Because I was afraid to travel too far.
Hey, Rob, can I ask you a question on this sort of book tour that you're planning? Is your publisher or anyone helping you set up different readings or stuff?
My publisher helps with some locations, yes. There are often like group readings with Finishing Line Press readers. So, that's one piece to it. But of course, the publishing business now is a lot of you fashioning this for yourself. And so, this is my third book. So I think I've made a lot of rookie mistakes with the first two, and I kind of know what I'm doing this time to some extent. I'm hoping I've learned. I'm setting up stuff for myself in the kinds of places that I know work for a poetry book. And I'm not trying to do the things that are pie in the sky things that don't really work for poetry, because people really don't want to, in certain venues, they really don't want to see poetry, you know.
And that can really be both a boon and a bane, because while you don't have the publisher working that hard on your behalf, you're also not required to do things that you're not comfortable doing.
You know, but my publisher assumes all of the investment financially and all of the risk that way, and gives me a lot of information and advice on timing and when I should be doing what, and you know, they've mapped that out for me.
What was the name of your press again, Elizabeth?
Finishing Line Press.
Oh, okay, cool.
Finishing
Yeah, I
Line
know that.
Press it is a press that does publish a ton of poets. Like if you go to their bookstore, it's packed.
Yeah, I've had a lot of friends publish with them.
Yeah.
The only scary thing to me with Finishing Line Press is the pre-order thing, that you have to have a certain number. Isn't that Finishing Line?
Well,
I might be
see,
mixing it up.
Here's the truth of that, because I've watched a lot of people in the Island Writers Network, which is where Barry and Denise and I work locally on the island. A lot of those writers have chosen to self-publish because the publishing business is so difficult. But for poetry, I don't get it, because your friends and family are going to buy your book. They're so sweet. My biggest contingent is my former students. They are half of my pre-order list. You know, I think that's pretty amazing. I think that's something, you know, for you as a teacher should know. I mean, I don't believe that they are that supportive, but they are. Like, they remember you. So that's pretty amazing. So all of those people are already in, and you get that out of the way in your pre-order, and in this case, it's going to determine my royalties.
But that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. So you know, that's the way it works. But I think they have the formula figured out so that, you know, if you can't sell to X number of friends and family, then when you get out into the, you know, stranger category, you may not sell. But I you know, the first two books have done really well. So
That's awesome.
Well,
I loved your work. Thank you so much for sharing it tonight.
But
Elizabeth,
appreciate
did
you.
sorry. I'm trying to find out if you said the book itself was going to be out in June. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I have hang on. I have
Okay.
postcards sitting here. This is the cover.
Oh, okay.
The cover was, yeah, the cover's
That's beautiful.
quite beautiful. It was done.
Oh, yes, I've
it was
seen
done
that.
by
What is
a
the name of
local
it?
artist, a local artist on the island named Mira Scott did the cover. And she's well known for her whimsical stuff and her use of color. And because To My Dream Catcher is so much, I mean, a lot of the poems in there are dream poems. Some of them are weird.
That's tree.
Yeah, there was a point where I was like waking up and writing down what I dreamed, because I was having these like really awful dreams after my husband died, and I just, you know, so I started writing them down, and then I was like, this is really weird. No one's going to believe this really went through my head.
Well, I can't wait. Did you say there was a little time left for the pre-order, or is it closed?
Yes, the pre-order ends tomorrow. So you could go online right now to Finishing Line Press, and it has a thing that says pre-order forthcoming titles.
Okay.
I don't do this as well as you do, Barry. And knock yourself out. I mean, you know, if you know somebody that is into poetry, it's a $20 gift, sorted.
Thanks for sharing that information too. I do have a chapbook coming up with Finishing Line Press.
Yeah.
In 23. Yeah. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm kind of in that process. Hasn't started the pre-order yet though.
Yeah, I was surprised this time how far out the publishing date was from when they picked me up.
Mhm.
because it wasn't like that the other two times. But
Okay.
you know, it feels like every form of business is dealing with delays and
Yeah, I know. I was talking to Richard Peabody, who's the editor of Gargoyle magazine, and he has had so many delays on paper, just getting paper to publish the books, that he for the first time, and he's published for 25 years, he's now taking Gargoyle, and it's no longer going to be a print magazine. It's going to be solely online because he's tired of waiting for paper for so long.
Yeah.
So
I hope that doesn't happen to everything. I mean, they both have their, you know, their pros and cons.
Well, at some point, things have to shake out, right?
We hope
We're still trying to get deliveries of our water, you know, our mountain water.
Life is long and
Like 2
everything
weeks.
kind of like rolls back into some form of normalcy. So we'll see. But you know, we have been very spoiled in our, I've lived in a lot of foreign countries where, you know, the mail never comes and you don't have phone service and, and you know, run down to the store when something shows up because it's going to be there that day and not the next day. And, you know, there are countries where it's like very different from here. We're very spoiled.
Yeah, that's a lifestyle for a lot of countries. It sure is.
Yeah.
We've been very lucky for very, very long.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we're still not unlucky. You
No,
know, we just don't want to wait. So
I want to call to attention Jackie's lovely pendant. Can you hold that up, Jackie?
Oh, yeah, yeah. My crane.
Yay! Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
I
that
saw
from
where they,
Tico?
yeah.
Greg Ross? Yeah, Greg Ross.
And Buford, yeah, Greg Ross made them. I saw a headline, you probably did too, that Buford did raise $50,000, which is fabulous for the sister city in
They
Ukraine.
carried it on the news, on the TV news in Savannah last night.
Wow.
They did.
Yeah.
what is Buford's sister city?
Ostra, Ostroh, Ostra.
Okay.
If you haven't watched, which sounds like you haven't, it was live streamed from USCB, and there was a little panel with the mayor moderating it. It's on the Buford, I think Buford.org on Facebook, and it's really worth watching. There's a woman that is from Ukraine. There was a woman who taught in Ukraine, and a young woman who's Russian, whose work is at T-Boat Gallery, and then a professor of political science. So it was really interesting. And you know, it's about an hour, the video, but I highly recommend that.
The news today was that the European Union countries are thinking about going without Russian oil, declaring against it, and that will really upset the entire energy markets. But what brave people to do that? 40% of their oil comes from Russia, and they're working to not buy it, which is just amazing.
Have they said
But
what?
talk about they're spreading the suffering around.
Yeah. Have they said what they'll replace it with?
Well, the United States has made moves to have more liquefied natural gas. And in the United States, we're adding more corn to our own energy supplies. So there are a lot of moving parts to this. It's not an easy question, but I'd certainly read up on it, you know, follow what's happening, because that's a major sacrifice.
I studied energy with my kids a long time ago. I want to say about 10 years ago. And at the time they were inventing these panels that they could put down on the streets that would charge cars using solar panels. It was really, really cool. The kids were all about it.
In the streets.
It was like the streets were made of these solar panels that then would charge cars and the electricity of major cities and areas.
Wow.
It would just run all the electricity because the solar panels would collect the light right from the sun and then somehow broadcast it out. I just thought it was fascinating.
That's hard to believe. That's amazing. Germany has not decided to do this. They are heavily dependent on Russia. But anyway, do some deep reading, read broadly. It's a really important issue. And it has to do with our deliveries and what we get, what we have, what we will be looking forward to not having, including paper. Not that we will be without paper, but it'll be harder to come by.
I did not mean to draw the conversation away from Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, thank you
Yes.
for your poetry. It was really lovely, lovely.
I think some conversations are more important than my books.
Oh, you're too self-effacing.
Looking to the future, looking to the future.
I thought that you're driving around in your I want to call it a motorhome. Is it a motorhome or a trailer? What do you call it?
The
I don't know.
teardrop.
That was absolutely
It's a
fabulous.
trailer.
It
My
was
trailer
fascinating.
was it was a 11 feet long and weighed like less than 1,100 pounds. And my regular, I had bought the car and then conceived of this idea, and so I was deciding things backwards.
Most cars
and
don't pull that much.
Yeah.
No, well, the Ford Escape pulls like 2,500 pounds. So
Mm.
I was good because there's a formula. Like you're not supposed to pull, like if your car can only pull 1,100 pounds and your trailer is 1,100 pounds, you're making a mistake by choosing. It needs to be a lot lighter because obviously, like, you know, you have weight in the car and you have other luggage. You know, there are rules.
Yeah.
But the new trailer, I needed something that could pull at least 3,500 pounds. So I've got a Subaru now.
Wow.
So, you know, it's still a car, but
Happy travels, happy publishing.
Happy and safe travels.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to do it this way, and you know, I have things set up, a kind of a skeletal thing set up all the way up to Boston. You know, I'm choosing to stop places I have family and friends.
Good.
And work. You know, I asked them all, what's your favorite bookstore? So start by getting myself set up there and go from there.
Great. Good
Are
luck.
you taking Byron?
Of course.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
Heck is
He's my
always
bud. Besides, you know, people worried about me being safe, but if you knew Byron, you wouldn't be worried. He doesn't let anybody near me.
And for those of you that don't know Elizabeth very well, she has been very gracious to those of us that are new writers, and she really encourages people a lot. And she just led the charge in the poetry kickstart for Poetry Month on the island, and that was well attended and very well done. And she does her open mics every month, and so she's been very supportive of all of us. And if you don't have the opportunity to go to one of her open mics on the island, you should. It's a great time, and she does a great job of sponsoring and supporting those things. So thank you for that too, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Thank you.
When does that happen?